Throughout my career, I've done a lot of interviewing, and I've interviewed a lot of people for data analytical roles, data science roles, and other roles. So one of the questions I get asked by people is, well, what kind of questions are asked in the interviews, especially for data analysts? If I was to list down or talk about all the questions that are asked, we could be here for hours. And also, you don't really know what exact question someone's going to ask. So what I'm going to do in covering this video is talk about the themes, the kind of questions that will be asked, give you a couple of examples of those questions so you get an idea or a flavor of what you might be asked, and then you can use that to research for yourself when you're applying for jobs, because usually in the job description they give you an idea of what they're looking for, and then based on what I tell you in this video, you can work out what kind of questions they're going to ask. Now, typically in a data analytical role, they'll probably ask you some general technical question. They may ask you something like, can you tell the difference between a primary key and a foreign key, right? So you should know this, the kind of knowledge that you should have, and you should know what that is. They may even ask you things like, how do you handle missing data in your data set? Or they may even ask you things like, what's the difference between a data warehouse and a database? They may even say, well, what's the process, or can you describe the process to ensure data quality? So those kind of technical questions are just to see how good you are, or how good your knowledge is about the broad area of data analytics. So those are sort of, like I said, the broad sort of general technical questions that they may ask you, and they may even ask you certain like statements, SQL statements or Python scripts. They may ask you, well, what does that mean? What's it trying to achieve? But there will be some general technical questions, nothing too complicated. Well, it depends on your level, but if we talk about sort of entry-level, mid-level data analytical roles, they won't be too complicated. They'll be sort of the questions that I've sort of listed out just now. Beyond those technical questions, they may ask you some statistical questions. So they may ask you a question such as, you know, what's the statistical method for hypothesis testing? So they want to know if you know about t-test, ANOVA, the regression, that kind of test, the way to understand if something is significant. Or they may ask you something a bit more complex, like what's the difference between supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. So come prepared. Like I said, look at the job description, and in the job description they sort of tell you what they're looking for, and make sure you sort of study around that area. So if they ask you any statistical questions, you're able to answer them. Then they may ask you about your experience, because what they're trying to understand is that have you actually done any analytical projects? It could be in another role, it could be at university, and one of the questions they may ask you is that can you give me an example of a project you've done and any challenges or difficulties you face in the project. Now, what they're trying to ascertain here is to see that you've actually done a project, and you can describe the process of doing that project and where you might find difficulties and challenges, because typically in projects there are certain stages, especially analytical projects, there are certain stages where certain challenges appear or some certain problems appear. So that's what they're looking for. Or they may just ask you, can you give me an example of an analysis you did that impacted the business? And again, here what they're trying to understand is that you understood what the business wanted to achieve, you did the analysis, and then you presented the finding to show how it might impact the business. And then the final set of questions they may ask is around testing your soft skills, right? So they may be asking you to say, they might say, can you describe something complex in sort of non-technical terms? So they might say, can you describe the outputs of a regression analysis in non-technical terms? Or they may ask you to talk about an example of where you've managed to convince the business to take on your recommendation from your analysis. Now here what they're trying to ascertain is that you're able to articulate the value of your analysis and the business understands it. So as you talk about this example and the value, they'll be able to understand if you were able to describe it in non-technical terms so that the business could understand. So like I said, there's a whole host of questions that you will be asked at an interview. And finally at the end they may ask you a question around, what are you interested in? Why did you apply for the job? There'll be all those kind of questions, things you should be preparing for anyway. But in the whole, what they'll be asking you are things like your technical. They'll be asking technical questions, so to test your technical knowledge. They'll probably be asking, testing your statistical knowledge. They'll be probably, like I said, testing your experience or understanding your experience by asking you to talk about examples. And then they're trying to understand your soft and communication skills. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you found the information useful. Hopefully, helps you prepare for your interviews. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below, and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Please do like and share the video, and keep watching for more videos.